Anthony Edwards just recorded back-to-back 30-point games against maybe the best team defense in modern NBA history. Between double teams, zones, and different pick-and-roll coverages, OKC's thrown just about everything his way, and he's somehow gotten better with each passing game. So what is it that's changed, and how is he so immune to this all-time great unit? For the most part, Game 1 of this series was a struggle for Ant. It seemed like OKC's constant ball pressure maybe caught him off guard a little bit, as that played a role in him turning the ball over 4 times. Take this play from the fourth, for example. Cason Wallace picks him up 94 feet, forcing him to run up the court quickly, only to immediately run into J-Dub, who presses up and forces him to lose his handle. They're comfortable giving up these cross matches because of how stacked their personnel is. But the risk is that every now and then Ant's gonna find himself on an island against a big, to which he'll do his thing one-on-one. The Thunder weren't really worried about that though. Anytime Chet was switched on to Ant, they wanted him to press way up on the ball to not give up a 3. You'd think that leaves them vulnerable to a blow-by, which would typically be the case. However, they've completely packed the paint with aggressive help, so he's always seeing multiple bodies. It was the exact same thing with Hartenstein. This time you're going to see Ant use a flare screen, and iHart jumps out on a switch to guard the 3. Then when Ant looks to reset, he presses way up on him away from the ball, then forces a turnover. Like I said, they're able to get away with this because of the help behind the play. Anytime Ant tried to play from an empty corner, they'd send the low man over to the strong side early, and with nowhere to go, he settles for a tough jumper. If instead of an empty corner, he played from the wing, they'd send the opposite wing defender to the nail to protect the middle, while the low man again stepped over from the weak side to wall off the opposite side. With nowhere to go, he turns his back to the basket, only for J-Dub to step over and take the ball. If instead of an empty corner or a wing, he started at the top of the key, they'd send the low man to the middle of the floor, again parking at the nail to not let him drive. He does a great job of creating space, but if you're the Thunder, you'll live with a long 2. Pretty much the only way to consistently beat this aggressive gap help is with proper spacing and execution from teammates. On this one, they empty the left wing, so in order for Shea to play the drive, he has to give up the pass to the corner, and Minnesota needs those guys to make the right plays. Unfortunately, they weren't in this game. Here's another example of Ant playing from the wing, and notice how Caruso just sits at the elbow, forcing him to drive towards the corner. Then J-Dub's gonna step up to the ball, while Caruso slides down to the baseline, and with nowhere to go, Naz Reid throws a pass to the crowd. Here's another example. Ant screens to get a switch onto Isaiah Joe, then sets up from up top. Wallace completely abandons his man to wall off the middle, forcing him to get rid of the ball. Then Dante's unable to take advantage of the rotation with a drive. In Game 1, the little success Ant did have came off of ball screens. Because the Thunder put Chet on McDaniels, the Wolves used Jaden as a screener quite a bit. This time they set up with an empty corner, and with Chet dropping back, he's able to step into a pull-up 3. More times than not, they just went to a classic spread pick and roll with the 5 though. Both iHart and Chet were dropping back, which meant that he had pretty unlimited access to those outside jumpers. Of course, this is a shot he basically mastered throughout the season, and all it takes is the smallest window for him to comfortably knock them down. But I did feel like a couple of these shots were rushed, and it almost played into OKC's hands because it was at the expense of his downhill game. Still, they definitely created much better opportunities out of that spread pick and roll. So to start Game 2, they leaned into that a lot more, and with the big still dropping back, he continued to have space to step into jumpers. Take this play for example. When Ant turns the corner, not only is iHart waiting and drop, Caruso's walling off a drive. The pull-up jumper is a great counter as long as he isn't cold. Unfortunately, that was the reality of Game 2. He shot just 1 of 9 from 3, and I'd say just about every one of these was a great look that he typically hits at a 40% clip. The big difference from Game 1 though is that he wasn't settling. With Chet starting to drop, he could use this little window. Instead, he patiently waits for the middle of the floor to open up, then navigates that space on his way to the rim for a layup attempt. On this one, I first want you to focus on Conley. They used him as a decoy to set up the pick and roll, and by clearing out, Shea starts to chase him to the opposite wing instead of sitting at the nail. That leaves Ant with space to attack the middle, and with only a big man to beat, he goes right at him for a beautiful finish. There was a real similar play late in the fourth quarter. This time it's Reed who starts in the middle and clears out, but Ant attacks in the opposite direction where Wallace is still in position to wall off a drive, so he adjusts by instead pulling up for a midi. In the event that one of OKC's bigs wasn't involved in the action, that's when they'd switch across the board. This time it's J-Dub who's getting ready to switch, and instead of backing up for an isolation, Ant counters the switch by quickly attacking the middle, where he finds some room to lay it up and in. Speaking of isolations, remember in game 1, most of these touches came around the top of the key, where the Thunder could get into their aggressive help and completely wall off the paint. Well, in game 2, they shifted more of his touches to the corner. A couple of times that meant posting up a smaller defender and using his size and athleticism to generate paint touches with his back to the basket. With that said, the problem with starting him in the corner is that OKC can just send the low man over early, which then takes away his space to attack. He had 2 different counters up his sleeve though. One was to instead attack the middle of the floor, which means that if they want to bring extra help to the paint, they're gonna have to abandon the corner, leaving McDaniels with a wide open 3. 2 was just to completely disregard the existence of a low man and attack anyways. Caruso's waiting for him on this one, and he uses some crafty footwork to just step right around him on his way to a layup. That aggression was pretty easily the biggest difference between games 1 and 2. Sure, the spacing and positioning on the court played a big role in getting him those paint touches, but more than anything, it was a shifted mindset and willingness to attack in tight spaces. After 1 attempt at the rim in game 1, he followed with 11 attempts at the rim in game 2, and that was the catalyst for a big-time performance. Outside of the poor three-point shooting, his on-ball attack felt close to perfect. He shot 11 of 17, or 65% on 2-pointers, which was his highest mark of this entire postseason, and he filled the stat sheet as a result, recording 32 points and 6 assists without turning the ball over a single time. In addition to the on-ball improvement, the Wolves also switched up his off-ball usage in game 2. They ran some set action, such as on this play where he starts under the basket, then uses a down screen to go get the ball, and what that did is it cleared the middle of the floor for a quick attack off the catch, resulting in another shot at the rim. Most of his time away from the ball though was spent spotting up one pass away. That way, if the Thunder want to bring immediate help, he's not only an outlet as a shooting threat, he'll explode into a drive and continue doing his thing as a slasher. For that reason, he offers a ton of spacing in these spots. Typically, OKC wants to load up at the nail, but with Ant up top, Wallace is hugging him, so when Jaden plays one-on-one, he's got the entire middle of the floor to work with. All things considered, this was one of the best offensive games I'd ever seen him play. The only problem is that the rest of the team didn't show up to help them get the win. Randall in particular really struggled, shooting just 2 of 11 from the field and turning it over 4 times, while Conley, Dante, and Reed shot a combined 7 of 22, or 32% from the field. So, despite the elite performance from Ant, the Wolves recorded just a 108 offensive rating and lost by 15 to go down 0-2 in the series. That takes us to the recent Game 3, where everything sort of fell into place for Minnesota. This time around, it actually started on defense. They upped their aggression both on and off the ball, which resulted in a few turnovers, then turned into easy offense going the other way. Here's one where Gobert smothers Ihart on a push shot, and after the ball gets tipped out, Ant hawks down a long rebound to gain possession, with nobody back to stop him from easy points. Then about a minute later, Ant found himself defending ball screen action, to which he jumped out and took Dort's cookies before again chasing the ball down for a dunk. As for the half-court game, they really leaned into that off-ball action. On the very first possession, they had him receive a handoff, only to immediately run off a ball screen, and with the big dropping back, he has a wide-open 3 that just rims out. A few minutes later, they went to a similar setup to what we saw in Game 2, with him starting under the basket. Only this time, he's going to run off of 2 down screens towards the wing, and nobody steps out to help, so he's left with a warm-up triple. This one starts with a sideline out of bounds play, and it's a real simple down screen for Ant to get the ball, but just that subtle action creates a ton of separation from Dort. So when he immediately runs into a ball screen from Gobert, he's again left with space to shoot, and this time he knocks it down. Speaking of which, the high pick and roll was where he continued to get most of his offense. In this game, they made a deliberate effort to attack an empty wing. Gobert's gonna set a ball screen all the way out at half court, and because there's nobody on the left wing, Shea's the only guy who can offer nail help. So when Edwards attacks, he has to make a decision between playing the ball or the corner, and Alexander Walker capitalizes with a 3. Here's another example. This time they're gonna set the screen going towards the right wing, but there's a shooter over there, which means there's nail help. So instead of attacking right, he rejects the screen to attack left, where Chet's still back in that drop. It was finally time for the hot shooting game. Ihart even brings his coverage up to the 3-point line, but without completely selling out to the ball, he isn't able to take him out of his comfort zone. And this one was just disrespectful. Ihart's so high up, you could almost argue this is a hedge, only for Ant to pull up from 30 feet for his 5th 3 of the game. Just because he got hot though, doesn't mean he started settling. If he didn't have space to walk into a pull-up jumper, he patiently worked his way to the middle of the floor and leaned on that mid-range. At a certain point, he entered that flow state as a shot maker, and at that point, all you can do is pray. This is some Kobe Bryant level audacity, fading away over 3 defenders while Gobert's by himself underneath the basket, and he hits nothing but the net. It wasn't just Edwards who got hot in this game. For the first time in this series, the entire team was shooting well. Of the top 8 in their rotation, excluding Gobert, only 1 player shot below 40% from 3, and as an entire unit, they made 20 of their 40 attempts. Because they were shooting so well, the Wolves could go back to some of those top of the key isolations. Remember, the way to counter is with the supporting guys knocking down shots, and that they did. The Thunder were quickly running out of options as Minnesota blew this game wide open, and so they started outright doubling him in an effort to make somebody else make plays. If only it were that simple though. He wasted no movement in this game whatsoever and consistently found ways to get around the trap. Like on this play from the third, he starts to isolate Joe up top, and Dort comes with a double from his right, so he attacks open space to his left, where he gets around both of them before shedding a third defender at the rim with a tough up and under finish. Also, I should mention that some other adjustments from game 2 popped up again in this one. For instance, those post-ups from the corner, but this time they switched up their spacing, with Gobert floating at about the free throw line to draw the low man. That means a double's gonna come from up top, leaving Jaden with a wide open catch and shoot 3. And just like in game 2, his spacing from 1 pass away continued to be a super valuable asset. Randall consistently found himself with room to attack the middle and was incredibly decisive. Like I said, everything just sort of clicked for the Wolves in game 3. Ant was getting to the rim, using the mid-range, and hitting his threes, which led to him finishing with an impressive stat line of 30 points and 6 assists on 84% true shooting. Randall had easily his best game of the series, playing quicker, attacking the middle, and finishing with 24 points on 72% true shooting without turning the ball over a single time. Across the board, shooters were hitting, they locked up defensively, and they finished this game with a historically efficient 141.6 offensive rating, which was the highest mark in franchise playoff history and helped lead the way in a dominant 42-point win. More than anything though, the story of this series for Minnesota's offense has been the way Ant figured out OKC's defensive approach a lot quicker than anyone could have possibly anticipated. As far as adjustments go from here, I'd expect them to abandon that drop coverage moving forward, which would then force a response from him and the Wolves, to which they'll probably have an answer. And all that's to say, it's been awesome to watch this specific chess match, and it's been awesome to witness the rise of Anthony Edwards as a top-tier NBA superstar. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of this series. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.